Hello, welcome back to Brain Break with Randy and Keitho. It's just me again, but I wanted to tell you just a little bit more about my youth. When I was a young man, a teenager, my dad loved to fish. He just thought it was the best thing ever. He actually was a professor of accounting at the University of Arizona. He would take opportunities to teach summer school at other campuses if there was good fishing. So we would go to places like Southern California. And at one point, the University of British Columbia became quite interested in my dad. He went up and spent 3 summers up there in a row. We would stay in someone's house and they would stay in ours. That was the deal they made. So it didn't cost us anything housing wise that we weren't already expecting. It was really interesting because we were in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a gorgeous and wonderful town. The first year we lived out on West Point Gray. There, the university has a huge endowment of land. When you drive out to the university, you drive for miles through this forest. That's all owned by the university. We rode our bikes through that like crazy. We had a great time living out there. And then the next year we lived near Chinatown. That was fun because we would get to literally walk from our house to the main part of Chinatown, which is only a block away, and eat amazing food for very little money. While I was there were these two guys. They were pretty funny. They went to the same park and would sit on a bench, talk to each other, and they would allow us kids to sit around and listen. We laughed. Well, I don't remember exactly when that is, but I could look it up. But this was Tommy Chong and his friend Cheech Marin, or Marin, as he says. It was hilarious to meet these guys. Both of them were single at this time. They had not made it. They released their first comedy album. I knew that album word for word because I'd heard them say it so many times in the park. But the reason my dad went to Canada was to go fishing. He would go fishing almost every day after he was done teaching. When possible, he would take my brother and I with us if we weren't out riding bikes somewhere else. And then for about 6 weeks after summer session was over, he would take off on his boat. And it was not a big boat. The first time or two we went to British Columbia, we were towing a 17-foot boat with 2 outboard motors. That's what we would go to Alaska on. It was pretty amazing. We had 3 sleeping bags, one for my dad, one for my brother, and one for myself. 2 of us would sleep in the little cuddy cabin up front. We had a box for food. We had a cooler that we kept milk, other things in it. But we would pack that up. We ate fish for almost every meal, but we had some vegetables that were in cans. We had bread every day. We would put out both crab traps. We called them prawn traps, but maybe they were shrimp traps. He would put those out, and we would then fish our way back up to those, pull them up, and we would feast on whether it was crab, salmon, halibut, or prawn. But we ate very well. In fact, one time we were at a little dock, and some people came by and kind of criticized us because we were filleting the salmon. My dad came out and said, "Why are you criticizing my boys?" They said, "Well, you're filleting salmon. Everybody knows you eat salmon and steaks." He says, "No," he says, "the reason we get more big crab and big shrimp than you do is this is what," talking about the salmon carcass, "we put in our shrimp and crab traps." But we had just an amazing summers. I would go home and my friends had talked about spending, or a day or two in Disneyland. And we didn't do that very often, but we did go fishing a lot, went out on the ocean. As my brother and I got older, we had opportunities we learned to scuba dive. I can't remember if my brother liked water skiing as much as I did, but I really liked it. And I would water ski on the ocean behind some very fast boats. And it was just the life. It was great. Wish I could have given my kids the same kind of life my dad was able to share with my brother and I. It was fun. I did not grow into liking fishing. I felt like I did enough of it when I was younger, and my wife never particularly cared for it. So I'm okay. I mean, I took the scouts fishing. I think I took my son a time or two, but I know how to fish. It wasn't something that appealed to me because I had done so much of it. As I got older, I even worked on commercial fishing boats. My dad at one point had 3 boats moored in San Diego. They all had commercial fishing licenses. So he would then let people rent them from him, and they would go out and catch fish, and sell it. It's actually not a bad paying job if you could find the fish, and a lot of people thought they could. My dad was an expert at that. I'm not sure quite how he did it, but he was pretty incredible. I remember when we went to see him in Alaska. They were living in Juneau. My dad told me and my wife that when we left the marina, people would follow us. He says, and they're going to anchor all around us. And I'm just shaking my head like, oh, Dad, in your dreams. But they did. They followed us out. Then he starts telling us as we're going out, he says, now they're going to anchor all around us and they're not going to catch any fish, and we're going to catch fish. I'm just kind of shaking my head like, oh, come on. It's not going to be that way. It was. We caught, on that one trip, I caught a 169-pound halibut, which was about 8 foot long or longer. My wife caught a 107-pound halibut. That was the first halibut she ever caught. She brought in a 12-foot long lingcod. My dad wouldn't let her bring it on the boat because he said, we have enough bait fish. And it really made my wife mad because she loved cod. But to him, if it wasn't salmon or halibut, it was bait fish. So we had a great time. When my dad would pass any kind of a beach that didn't have logs in front of it where they were storing them off the shore, he would pull up and let my brother and I out on those trips, and we would just run in the meadows, through the timber. We had a great time, but we were trying to stretch our legs because when you're standing in a 17 or 23-foot boat, but they're still small boats, and you wanted all the exercise you could get, especially when you're growing boys. The water was so cold, it wasn't like you were going to jump in and go swimming. My brother and I both had the opportunity of scuba diving up there. It was fantastic. It was totally different from scuba diving in Southern California. In Southern California, the sea anemones would be about this big, like a small half ball, not even as, like a very small dodgeball, but cut in half. Whereas Alaska, because there wasn't anything to compete against them, they were huge. They were as big around as a beach ball. And you would watch those things move across the ocean floor. There weren't any sharks up there because it was too cold. The only kind of shark they had was a dogfish. But we had a great time. One time my dad let us off on an island, and he said he was going to fish down the side of it, and he'd pick us up around the other side of the island at a little beach. So my brother and I chased each other through this little forest. We kind of lost each other, but it wasn't that big of an island. We kind of knew where we would go, but we had got out of sight of each other, and I swear I saw Bigfoot. I don't know if I really did, but all I know is I was scared. I didn't want to go on an island anymore for a while. I was probably 14, but it was an experience, and an interesting one at that. So I guess that's my story about taking 6 weeks off and going fishing every summer for 3 years. And we just had a wonderful time. I enjoyed fishing because my dad enjoyed fishing, but I didn't want to dedicate my life to it to where other things got out of the way. Other things fell by the wayside. What my wife and I did for my children is we would rent jet skis and ski boats and things like that instead of owning them. They say a boat is a hole on the water that you pour money into. I think that's true. I know we spent an awful lot of my dad's income on a boat, but he loved it. He had loved the ocean ever since he was in the Navy during World War II. He was never scared of rough seas. My brother and I were terrified a time or two, but my dad was never terrified. At least he never showed any fear to us. We became pretty good seamen. I know I was able to work on a fishing boat or two because of the skills that my father had taught me and the books he had us read. When I would run out of all of the fun books to read, my paperbacks, he would have books on navigation, small boat piloting, and things like that. Even engine maintenance. I read all those books when I was bored. I didn't need to have a fishing pole in my hand to be able to fish the way he had the boat set up. So being able to read and watch the tips of the poles was still fun. So thanks for joining me and allowing me to reminisce. I hope you have a great day and have enjoyed this, thank you for joining me for Brain Break with Randy and Keitho. Please like and subscribe. We love your comments. If you can, tell your friends and family about us. Please have a wonderful day.